Hi all. I'm just back from my bike ride, my daily bike ride, and thought I would record your midweek lecture for EDPS. And this is for Monday night and my Tuesday, Thursday, fine folks. Um, so we looked at a couple of pages worth of bad items, and I was real pleased, at least being able to be live with my Tuesday, Thursday students, that you have a good idea, um, just from having been students all your life, of what good and bad test items are like. But we're going to get specific over the next few weeks in terms of do's and don'ts. And I hope you listen to my lectures, whether live on Zoom or recorded like this one. But I also have summarized in a course pack the tips for the do's and don'ts. So stay tuned for that. Today, what I'm going to do is dive in with how to write and use matching sections in tests and binary in tests. Binary meaning usually, anyway, true, false, right? So let us turn to the second part of the course pack. I'll call it Part B, electronic pages 11 and beyond. So I'll wait while you do that. Yep. And I'll do the same. Page 11 in course pack part 2. It's the page that at the top says some down-to-earth guidelines for constructing traditional assessments. No, one page back. My bad, page 11. Yeah, that's where we are. I was actually reading off of the next page. Electronic page 11, scribbled page 66. I'm not going to run through these general tips today. We're going to do those another day. But if you feel like looking those over, you can. Most of them should not be surprising. Just as a heads up, number 1 says tests should assess what was taught. Avoid checking on trivia. I feel like saying duh, not to you all to insult you, but because I hope it's obvious that tests should test what was taught. But scroll down, page 12 are more tips, specifically administrative tips, things about when you actually give the test. Again, we'll cover those another day. But today, let's go to page 13, and we're going to dive in with my little, hopefully helpful tips on how to write items. And you'll get homework next week. Don't worry right now about homework. There will be none assigned today. Next week, after I've gone over this and we've had a chance to discuss this stuff Monday and Tuesday, you'll be asked to give it a shot at writing your own test items and then having me look at them and get some feedback. All right, matching. I hope it's obvious that a matching set is going to check on low cognition stuff, not deep concepts or higher level thinking sort of things, but rather names, dates, etc. Things you might want the kids to memorize, periodic table symbols, for instance, key dates, and so on. There are some rules for doing it right. Some of them we touched on Tuesday with our look at those bad items. But let's run through these together, see if they make sense. And then I'm going to take you elsewhere in the course pack to analyze some samples that might be good, might be bad. All right, have the set check on a single very narrow theme, such as all names of people who have walked on the moon, or all U.S. capital cities, and so on. You don't want to mix things, because if you mix things, you make it not confusing, but easy. And you don't want to make it easy. You don't want to make it hard, but you don't want to make it easy either. So don't mix states and people's names and dates and chemical symbols and so on. You don't want to mix all those up, right? By the way, you can have, I didn't write this down, but you can have more than one matching set within a big test. Let's say a chapter test, a unit test, a semester test, or whatever. You could check on a bunch of narrow things on the test. You could have a bunch of sections, right? Right. All right. Number 2, go for brief wording and parallel response construction. That's just a fancy way of saying, as always, keep it lean, right? Don't go on and on. And have the responses, which would be on the right side of the page, kind of smell and look the same. Now, usually that'll be automatic. For instance, if you're doing U.S. presidents, well, of course they're all going to be the same. They're going to be 2 names, unless you occasionally want to put 3. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I don't care. But they need to smell the same. You're not going to have a one word for one answer and then a full sentence for another answer, right? It needs to be kind of plain and parallel. There's a rule, number 3, there's a rule that says you should put the wordier column on the left. Why? Because the wordier stuff, such as the description of a president, needs to be read first so that the youngster can process it and say, oh, that's William Henry Harrison. And then they look and match it up with William Henry Harrison. So give them the stuff that they need to process and read first. And then the shorter stuff, if there is shorter stuff, on the right. If both sides are about the same in terms of verbiage or size, it doesn't really matter how it goes. We call this stuff on the left premises. If you want to call them questions, it's not the end of the world, but they're not really questions. We call them premises. 4 to 10 work well. There's no exact cutoff, but how would you do a matching section of 2 or 3? That's pretty lame. And more than 10, there's no need. So if we say 4 to 10 work well. 5, you should offer more responses, that's the stuff on the right, than premises. Throw in a couple extra that make sense, but don't match up with anything on the right. That helps, this will sound weird, that helps eliminate process of elimination. You don't want students to get stuff right by process of elimination. You want them to get stuff right because they know their stuff. Make sense? Now, if you're a student, of course you're going to try to use process of elimination, but you don't want to give them a lot of opportunity to do that. 6, just one correct response. Don't have it possible that something on the left can match up with 2 or 3 things on the right. That gets pretty confusing. And as we said Tuesday when we went over those bad items, keep it all on one page, right? So briefly scroll backwards, if you would, to electronic page 5 in the same course pack chunk that you're in. Yeah, you're going to scroll back to page 5. And you'll see there the start of a pretend final exam for 9th graders who have been studying U.S. presidents. Now, I made up this test on purpose for our learning purposes, but I've tried to make it semi-realistic. And what I've done over a couple pages is done a section of each of the 6 classic item types, starting with matching. I said there was no written homework for next week, Monday and Tuesday, but I do want you to look over this section, and based on what I just gave you in terms of tips for matching, see if you could spot some issues here. This is not a real bad matching section, but there are some rules that I gave you a minute ago that have been violated, right? Now, a couple cases It's not exactly rules being violated. It's just, nah, I wouldn't do it that way. See if you could come up with at least 3 or 4 uh, issues with this section. Again, this is not something to be turned in. I'm not going to collect anything or grade anything, but do be ready to contribute next Monday or Tuesday with what you might have spotted, okay? And we're going to do this shtick every time I give a little lecture on item types. So that's 1 down, 5 to go. We'll do 1 more today. So scroll back up to electronic page 13 again. And we're going to look at binary. As I said, binary usually shows up as true, false. But it doesn't have to be true, false. The section could have all items with students having to choose, say, organic, inorganic, or pre-war, post-war, or linear, quadratic. You get it? So the whole set needs to be the same 2 choices over and over. Alrighty? Why do I ask that the binary be in sets of certain numbers, say 5 items? Why can't you just have a solo true, false item? Well, I'll tell you. If my magic massive post-it note doesn't fall. Let's say you asked, let me see, is that showing up? Yeah, that's good. Let's say you ask kids, and I'm going to abbreviate. You don't abbreviate much on real tests. True or false? Number 1, George Washington, again, I'm abbreviating, was the first U.S. president. I'm putting prez. You would write it out. And Dwayne circles true on your quiz or test, which is correct, right? We're not going to argue the point. That's correct. Why, as a teacher, am I not totally thrilled? I'm not unhappy with his response, but I'm not totally thrilled with it either. If we were live, I would ask one of you to tell me, but I will tell you. Because there were only 2 answer choices, response choices, it was 50-50 that Dwayne got it right by guessing versus he knew his stuff. It's easy to guess and get him right half the time. So 1 binary item, 1 true-false item alone doesn't make me real confident that Dwayne or whoever knows this stuff for sure. He might, but he might not. I'm just not real thrilled with this 50-50 thing, right? It's too much where guessing can matter. So what do we do? Real simple. You ask kids to respond to 5 similar narrow-themed statements about George Washington in this case, and see how they do. True, false, true, false. Give me a second here. True, false, true, false. Now, I'm not going to write anything. Just listen to what these might say. George Washington was leader of the Continental Army. True. That's to be true. George Washington was from Virginia. I think that's true. George Washington served 3 terms as U.S. president. That's false. George Washington died in 1801. That's true. Now, it was 50-50 that Dwayne got the first one right. But what if, I forget what each item was. What if the items are true, 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 false, and true, and Dwayne got them all right? Could he have guessed? He might have, but it's not very likely, is it? The likelihood of getting all 5 right by guessing is very small. And I'm wondering, and I'll see if I can remember to bring this up next Monday or Tuesday. I'm going to ask someone, what are the odds, or if you'd like, what is the percentage of Dwayne getting them all right by guessing? How likely is it that could happen? And I want an answer numerically. No one else has to worry about this if you don't want to tackle that. It's just like almost a bit of trivia. But I think it's clear to everyone that it's not very likely that Dwayne or anyone else is going to get 5 out of 5 by guessing, although it's possible. It's also possible that if you go to the casino, you'll hit it big, but it's not likely, right? So be careful with your cash, especially if you have student loans due. Don't go to the casino. And if you do go to the casino, don't lick the handles at this point, or you'll get COVID. Whatever. You might. Okay, so bottom line here about binary at the moment, a little more on binary in a second, is that they come in sets, and all 5 or 4 or 6 or 7, somewhere around 5, need to be checking on a narrow little set of stuff from your unit or your lessons. In this case, basic facts about George Washington, right? You could do another one if we're doing early U.S. history, basic facts about the Declaration of Independence. But don't scatter them. Let's say the unit was the U.S. Revolution. Don't have within one set, don't have one thing about George Washington and another about King George of England and another about the Battle of Yorktown and another, you get it? Don't mix them up, right? Keep it tight so that, let's say a youngster gets them all right, as in this case, you could say, aha, diagnostically, I see that Dwayne knows basic facts about George Washington. So it's good information for the teacher as well. I hope that little shtick made sense. Back to the course pack, a little more on binary. So if you're lost, again, that's page 13 and course pack part B. Number 2, provide binary items as a set. 5 works well. Make sure each item offers no more than 2 propositions. That just means don't fill up the statement with tons of stuff. Remember the Jane Austen Pride and Prejudice one from Tuesday? And several of you correctly pointed out that it was just jammed packed with information. Don't do that. 2 propositions mean it's okay to have 2 facts, but probably no more than that. Avoid predictable response patterns. This is also going to go for multiple choice when we get there. Don't purposely, for instance, make all of them in the set true or all false or whatever. Random rules. They should just be random. And tell the kids, hey, don't be looking back at what the previous one was, true or false, and think, well, I think the next one is going to be false because we've had 3 trues in a row. Tell them it's random. Tell them not to worry about the pattern. In fact, let there be no pattern. Just if there's several in a row that are false, so be it. Tell the kids that ahead of time. They should not. You should not purposely have some kind of cutesy repeating pattern or whatever, right? It's just random rules. What do I mean by number 5? Avoid blatancy. Blatancy is when you write something that even if the kids didn't study or pay attention, it's obvious. It's blatant. It's just obvious. Number 9, there has never been, let me start over. Number 9, no president has ever been assassinated. Well, even if they haven't been studying, it just sounds false, doesn't it? Even if they just know a little bit about U.S. history, they're going to know that that's false, right? So avoid statements when you do binary that sound obvious. Okay, hope that helps. And here's a big one. Avoid negatives for the most part, like not, never, none, and so on. Studies have actually been done by people like me with lots of time on their hands to do these studies. And it's found that even if the statement is otherwise clear, the use of not, never, none, and so on tends to confuse some youngsters who otherwise know their stuff. So it's best to avoid using those words. There might be a few exceptions I can think of, but in general, make the statement positive. I didn't say make it true. I mean, you could write it as a positive statement, but it's false. You could do that, but make the wording positive, okay? So to summarize, I don't usually read aloud, but I will hear it for emphasis. Here's a way to check on the quality of your matching and binary sections. When looking at a student's score for the section, would you be able to put into words the specific single thing the student apparently knows or doesn't know? Does Dwayne know basic biographical facts about George Washington? Yes or no? Or somewhere in between, right? That's why you don't scatter stuff. All right, that was a little bit about binary. So again, scroll back to where we were a minute ago in the same course pack to actually to page, looks like 6. Electronic page 6, scrawled page 53. It says part 4, presidential crises. Yes. I'll tell you this, the directions aren't bad. Put T for true, yes, T for 2, right. T for true and F for false in each blank, 1 point each. Those directions are not bad. Now there's a few other ways you could do it. You could put a T and an F and have kids circle, right? Or you could literally have them write out the word true or the word false. Having taught middle school for years, I did, let me move that out of the way 1 sec. I just love middle school kids. I love them to death. I would occasionally get this from Dwayne, whoever Dwayne was, right? And I would always mark that wrong because I don't know if you mean true or false. And of course, Dwayne would come up and complain, and he would say, no, that's true. That's just a little extra mark there. I meant for that to be true. Dwayne, you're scamming me, and I don't buy it. You're a great kid, but you're scamming me. Go sit down. I'm marking it wrong. Don't do that again. So that's what you would do. That's what you would do for if you ever got that one. So there's a number of ways you could actually set up a binary section. But even though this part 4 on page 53 has some errors and some issues, visually and in terms of format, it's set up nicely. So that next week when I ask you to actually do some of these, you could sort of copy the format. But there's some problems with a few of these. And just like with the matching section of page previous, please look over part 4 and be ready to talk about it next Monday and or Monday or Tuesday. Okay, because there are errors. And then I'll assign some homework for both of these. But that is a quick look at how to write good matching sections and good binary. I'll say again, both of those sections should be used for fairly low level information and cognition. We're not having kids think deeply. We're probably having them mostly do memorizing and then showing that they memorized, right? Crudely put, regurgitation. Right? But that doesn't mean that it's not necessarily important stuff. I'm not saying this is trivial. Example, imagine in an advanced chemistry class, early on testing, do they know the important symbols of the periodic table? I mean, chem students should not have to look up that H is hydrogen. So you might do a quiz early on about maybe not all 100 plus elements on the periodic table. But, you know, the 30 most common ones they should know. And you would do that by matching or binary, right? So low cognition doesn't mean unimportant. It just means memory kind of stuff, dates, facts, symbols, what have you. Thank you for listening. That was only 25 minutes, but I covered what I wanted to. I'm finding these lectures, whether live or recorded, go fairly quickly because I don't have quite as much chance to interact with you as I would if we were in person. But I'm guessing you're not complaining too much. So again, no homework other than please look over those two sections. Be ready to talk about them next Monday and Tuesday. I am out of town briefly all day tomorrow. No, cancel that. I am recording this Tuesday evening, but you're getting it a different day. So just completely ignore what I just said. Okay, just totally disregard previous memo, as they say. Okay. All right, I'm going to cut here, and if you have questions or issues, email me. Take care. Bye.